Any of you project managers in the room? Anyone? All right. How do you do a big project? You break it down, right, into, what do they call it, manageable parts, decomposition. So Chad had the idea to break my PowerPoint down into small parts because it was too big for me to email it. So there you go, Project Management 101. I love that. All right, so how's everybody doing? Lunch was good? Lunch was okay? All right, folks, 12 hours ago, Taylor Swift's album dropped. Give me some, come on! Hey, if you're not a Taylor Swift fan, you know someone who is. So everybody in this room should be excited, right? Do I have some Swifties in the front here? All right, see? Who's going to see the movie this weekend? All right, I got my ticket. No, 2 people? I can't believe this. I've got my tickets for Sunday night when I get back. All right, this is exciting, and AI is exciting too. Yeah, all right, now we got some enthusiasm going with this audience. So I love to talk about new technologies, new innovations. Everybody's talking about AI, right? Everyone, even everybody at this conference. But one of the things I think that's missing from a lot of conversations is how do we do it right? What are some of the key components? Am I doing all right, guys? I hear some crackling. Are we okay in the back? Okay, Javante, my guys, solid. Speaking of solid, we don't do enough conversation or enough education in the industry around how to do things like AI or new capabilities, new technologies, how to do them right. So I wanted to put this presentation together so that we could together come up with some of the ways that we can build AI on solid ground. I've got a couple of polls for the audience. I was going to do them using the Mentimeter. Couldn't quite get that to work out, so we'll just do some raises of hands to keep you all exciting or to have you stand up. So with that in mind, as Chad said, I'm Cindi Carter. I am originally from Michigan. I now live in Kansas City. I don't know if there's any football fans here, but you know, Taylor's kind of my homegirl now, right? And I wasn't gonna go into technology at all. I actually trained for 11 years to be in the Olympics in figure skating. There's an ice rink on every corner when you grow up in Michigan. Any of my Michiganders in the audience? Do I have, I've got one person from Michigan here. All right, excellent. Oh, 08, Ohio, hey, that's all right too. We're, you know, good old Midwest, right? You can take the girl out of the Midwest, but you can't take the Midwest out of the girl. And I did not make that Olympic podium, just so you know, just so we're clear on that. Nancy and, what's the other gal? Tanya, they made it. Well, that was interesting, but there's a whole other story behind that. So I set my sights on college, started out in pre-med. My mom was a nurse, my dad worked at IBM. Halfway through college, I decided my parents spent a lot of money on figure skating for me. Coaches, ice time, competitions, blah, blah, blah. So I decided I wanted to make money sooner rather than 8 years of medical school debt, so I switched my major and went into computer science. IBM, my dad kind of influenced me there. Fast forward a little bit, I've had a very strong career in information technology, also with a heavy focus on healthcare, finance, and public sector. And I landed at Check Point 4 years ago, and I get to work with our worldwide executive engagement team, both for Check Point's internal as well as our external facing cybersecurity practices. And I get to do fun stuff like this and share some Taylor Swift stories. So with that in mind, we're going to dive into this agenda here today. We're going to go into a little bit of a background. Again, Taylor Swift analogy, the eras of AI, right? Have any of you seen a comparison to the AI eras to Taylor Swift eras? Anyone? No? A resounding no, right? Because you're going to see it now. All right, cool. So here's the list, right? This is all 10 of the Eras tour, right? Lover all the way down to Midnights, and we're going to go through each and every single one of them in raw detail. No, not that much detail. But you know, AI really has had its own Eras tour, and you know, Taylor Swift really reimagines her entire story of her life through music, as we are experiencing AI reimagining how we do everything every single day in our organizations and at home and everywhere else. So The AI era on the left, that coincides with her first era lover, right? This was actually back in the 1950s, okay? So this is a little bit of a history lesson for you as well. This was the very, very beginning, very innocent beginnings of AI. It was dreamers sketching possibilities on chalkboards. Daniel Turing questions about, can these computer things even really think? So we were just dabbling in it, and Taylor's lover era was just that wide-eyed, romantic, kind of hopeful beginning, right? So there's your era comparison there. Then we get into a bunch of optimism, right? We're fearless. We are going in head first. And this is around the 1960s and 1970s. And the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, started putting some heavy funding into AI, stuff that maybe none of us even had the awareness of. And this is where there was a lot of optimism, but then there was some disillusionment as well. Because as they experimented and failed, they were sort of thinking, the technologists, that's the they, were, I'm not really sure this is where it's at. All right, maybe it's my necklace doing this. Is that what it is? Oh, I got a thumbs up. Okay, hold on one second. We're gonna do a little adjustment here. I'm gonna take the necklace off. Don't let me forget it though, okay? Remind me that it's on the stage here. All right. Okay, see? All right, so what did I say? Yeah, fearless optimism followed by disillusionment. Era 3, this was sort of the winter, the dark period, the plateau, call it what you want, as it coincides with Taylor's third era of red. It's where innovation really collided with complexity. It was passionate and it was bold, but it was also very, very chaotic. So DARPA started cutting the funding. There were, a little bit of, just sort of the wind being let out of the sails. As I said, this was sort of that plateau or dark. Some people even called it the winter. Fast forward now into the 1990s through 2000s. This is where, okay, we're gonna take a pause, we're gonna take a deep breath, and we're gonna start to really think about what this is gonna mean to us, because there's something here, and we're gonna go ahead and make something of it. And the interesting thing is, Speak Now was her third studio album that she actually wrote herself while she was touring in 2009 to 2010 to reflect on her own transition from adolescence into adulthood. And this was sort of AI coming into its own. AI was starting to get a little bit more mature. It was starting to progress with a little bit of age and experience, right? So I think the analogy there is pretty solid. Now, this was one of my favorite eras. Who loved Reputation? Okay, right? Boom, 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 really good stuff out there. So this was, we had headlines, right? There were deep fakes and misuse of AI and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So, some bad reputation stuff, but there was some good reputation as well. It was powerful, and it was that comeback after some of the setbacks that we'd experienced. So that's how Taylor's Reputation era reflects back into the AI era of the 2010s. Now, here we are again, more reflection. Back into the folklore era of Taylor's, it was very introspective, very creative. So this is where data scientists and computer scientists got together and they start to really begin asking, how do we do this AI thing thoughtfully? How do we sustain it? How do we actually take a look at this? And if you look at the years around this was, post-pandemic or pandemic-ish, right? They were experimenting with AI use in healthcare, the Myrna vaccine development, and the natural language models started to become a little bit more prevalent. They started to grow. All right, era 7. All right, this was 1989, or her era 1989, which was kind of cool. This was, everybody's coming out of post-pandemic boredom, and now they're really starting to go crazy with it. Because this was when, next month will mark the 3-year anniversary of ChatGPT, right? So now AI was in everybody's hands. It was accessible. It was usable by everyone. It was AI everywhere, basically, and you don't necessarily know what you have until you start using it publicly and use it in the masses, and it goes mainstream, right? AI was just everywhere during this era. Now, this is the tortured poets department era, right? This is where data leaks and misuse and deep fakes really started to torture us, right? With thinking about, okay, how are we gonna actually use AI and not let it be used for bad things? We wanna use it for good things, but we all know that those cyber criminals are out there, and they're leveraging it just the same way that we're trying to leverage it for our business development. So those are some of the sobering lessons that happened during this reckoning period, and now here we are. Her surprise songs that was part of her set list in the Eras Tour. And this was where she would just do something completely unplanned, completely unscripted, unpredictable set list of one-offs. And now you've got other organizations besides OpenAI starting to embrace how to make further models with AI, further usage. You've got Microsoft, you've got AWS, you've got Google. You've got all of those technology providers now all creating AI agents and creating AI accessibility in that way. So very much a surprise. And it was sort of like that gold rush moment, right? Everybody's running towards it. Okay, last one, I promise. Here we are at Midnights. This is us, 2025. And we've got AI everywhere. It's always on intelligence. The other day, my husband was in the kitchen and said, hey, I'm thinking about ordering a pizza. And all of a sudden, on his phone, he started getting coupons for pizzas. And I'm like, stop. We got to turn all the electronics off in the house. But seriously, it's always on. Somebody's always listening. So I don't know about you. I still think that there's a lot of human aspect to AI. We've got to make sure that we keep the humans in the loop. We've got to make sure that we're collaborating together. And I think that there are some boundless possibilities. Just like she has reflected in her Midnights era, it's that endless energy and the intentional aspects of Midnights. So there's your AI eras as compared to Taylor Swift. What do you think? Can you use those? Take them back to your teams. Explain them to your board of directors. They'll love it. Okay. All right, on to more serious things, though. We are going to talk about the way to innovate AI on solid ground. And we have to talk about at least 5 things as we have this conversation. One of them is going to be securing the base, right? Securing those foundational elements. I don't call them the basics. Zero trust, multi-factor, email security, endpoint security. I know you hear a lot in conversations about them being called the basics. Basics makes it sound easy, and none of that stuff is easy. Does anybody think that stuff is easy? It's not, is it? All right, there's silence. I've rendered you all either asleep or you're just riveted by this conversation. But those foundational elements are difficult, and many organizations still struggle with doing them. So I promise you're not going to be reported back to your company, but how many of you are still struggling with some of the foundational elements that I just mentioned there? Zero trust, email security. Okay, I've got a few hands going up now. Okay, we're all friends in here, and this is Chatham House rules. Okay, I promise you. Except for the AI agent that's listening somewhere on your phone. So securing the base has to be there, right? We haven't done DLP or identity and access management right yet, have we? We still get compromised. We get compromised credentials because we still haven't done zero trust and identity and access management right. We're getting better, but we haven't done it right yet. Okay, we have to embed AI in our security operations to help bolster our defenses, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Governance and education. Yeah, how many of you are in the regulatory space when it comes to policy development, whether it's internal or external, GRC, you have to do the compliance and regulations. Okay, so we don't have a lot of AI regulation here in the US. Now, the European Union did. They, last year, went ahead and adopted their EU AI Act, right? We need to add another couple of vowels in there. But our government's on a shutdown right now, y'all. Okay? So who's making AI policy out there? Anyone? Anyone get suggestions? Let's do a think tank afterwards and we'll figure it out. But you do have to have that level of governance. We have to have guardrails in our organizations. We have to keep the data safe. We have to keep the humans safe. We have to make sure that we're free of bias in our AI usage, that we're free of, that we're not violating any ethics capabilities there. So that's where you innovate with guardrails. And then, of course, you have to elevate collaboration across your entire organization. And I'm not just speaking from the voice of the CISO. I'm talking to every single role in this room here, every technologist, every security engineer, every security architect, whatever your role is, we have to be security champions of AI, and we have to make sure that every single project in our organization has security in mind when it comes to leveraging AI to solve that business problem. So we're going to expand on those here in just a minute. Because if you go too fast, right, we all know everything is moving super fast. AI is just like a rocket being launched off of a wooden cart. And the cart's going to fall apart, right? The cart is your foundation that thing is strapped onto right now. I love metaphors. But as I said, there's an explosive use of AI because it does show, there's evidence that it shows increases in productivity and, believe it or not, reduction in risk as long as you're doing it with secure foundations. Otherwise, you are just going to magnify those risks in your organizations where there's cracks in your foundation. Organization is moving faster than we can secure it right now. All right, we're going to skip the Menti poll because I can't get that to work. But just by show of hands right now, I'm going to give you 3 answers, and just raise your hand if you have it. Does your organization have what you would refer to as a solid or a formal AI security strategy? If you have yes and you've implemented it, please raise your hand. Okay, I got a couple here. All right, good, good. If you've say yes, but it's still kind of in development, raise your hand now. Okay, a lot more. And how many of you have like no idea? That should be all the rest of you. Okay. Well, that just helps us really, that's really actually what I expected. Because a lot of this is still being built, right? A lot of the train is being assembled while it's on the tracks, and it's already there, right? We've heard of shadow AI. We've heard of uses of AI that the IT or the security teams have no idea about, just like shadow IT. Nothing is different there. So we have to make sure that we're leading through the organization with having a sound strategy. And what is that strategy? It defines the business problems that we're trying to solve with the use of AI. So I love to do side-by-side comparisons like this. So on the left, those are some of those foundational elements that I just talked about as far as the structure of your AI foundations, right? On the right-hand side is just more of a categorical type of an explanation there. So as I mentioned on all of those, and by the way, does anybody remember cloud implementations from like, what, 10 or 15 years ago when cloud hit the universe, and we had so many cloud misconfigurations, and we still do today, right? We still haven't gotten cloud right, and we have to, because we have to start to secure those workloads that AI is starting to now leverage. So all of those things have to be in place, and these are good graphics to use for if you're having any discussions with your team or your leadership, because if we don't get these things right, it's going to magnify the risk in our organization. And as my role as the Chief Information Security Officer, I have to lead my organization through managing risk, through managing cyber risk specifically. So it makes my job really hard if we don't have that stuff in place. It makes all of our jobs really hard. And we already know, right? The attackers that are on the left-hand side are leveraging AI for their own good, right? They can launch phishing campaigns, deep fakes, everything else much faster than they ever could before AI came into the picture. And they're not regulated. They don't have to wait for somebody to tell them it's okay. They're all in it together. You know, AI as a service is cropping up now. And although on the right-hand side, there's those of us that are trying to do it right, trying to use it for good, trying to help our organizations improve operating outcomes, improve operating processes, improve customer experiences, get products to market faster. Those are some of the case studies around AI that have been done that actually prove that that AI is helping with those. But if we don't get those foundation elements in place right, then the attackers are going to leverage our vulnerabilities in our AI deployments, right? There's the V word, vulnerabilities. You know, we have to talk about that because those cracks in our foundation are those vulnerabilities that AI can exploit that much faster. All right, so here's some lessons learned. And there's on the left-hand side, these are some publicly known mistakes that were made from some early on AI implementations. And that's the difference between getting it wrong. There's shadow AI, there's lack of the guardrails, public data exposure, and then getting it right. There's a company in Finland that actually used AI to accelerate their ISO 27001 deployment, because they leveraged AI with their existing governance frameworks, their existing security controls. So they helped make, that's why I asked the question earlier about our GRC folks, because there is a ton, a minutia of detail in managing all those security controls, and then going back to your organization and then proving or attesting to some of these certifications. Are many of your organizations are probably ISO certified, yes? Or SOC certified, SOC 1, SOC 2, whatever it is. Any of our healthcare folks, HIPAA, right? These security controls, all of those regulatory items are now being updated to include AI. Well, that company in Finland, Kempower, actually did just that. So that's a good side-by-side comparison of not doing it right versus doing it right. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on these. By the way, I think we have the ability to share these slides afterwards. So if you want these, because there are some hyperlinks into some of these studies that I pulled up. But this is even more examples of AI not being done right. But then there's even some great examples of AI being done right. And so I would encourage you to go look at some of those first two studies there on that company in Finland, Kempower, and then also several organizations in this one. Those were both studies from Carnegie Mellon University, or I'm sorry, Cornell University, and they're actually pretty good. So in order to do AI right, we've got to have a framework. Right? There is a framework out there, and NIST launched an AI governance framework. I broke it down to make it a little simpler, because the NIST one is a bit much to consume. But I like to keep things simple, and I talk about 5 things. How many times have I already talked about securing the base already so far this afternoon? Empowering our defenders, our security operations with AI. That's another one. The third one there is governance and education. We do have to make sure that we're educating our employees as well. No longer can we just get by with the annual compliance education on security. We have to now start creating AI training in our organizations so people understand what they can or cannot, what they should or should not put into some of those prompts. And that's where we innovate with those guardrails. We make sure that we're leading from behind. The collaboration within your organization, and I've heard our new CEO at Checkpoint say, I'm not going to lead from the front, I'm going to lead from behind. I don't want to get in anybody's way of innovation, and we are going to do it securely. So the C-suite has to be on board. The rest of the organization, the management, the leadership, every single employee, everybody has to be on board, and everybody needs to be able to collaborate around this. AI has actually brought people together. So why would we operated in silos in our organizations, right? Okay. But it doesn't end there with those 5 steps. There's some other things that are in the periphery here that we have to make sure we pay attention to. Compliance and regulation, as I've mentioned, many of us are governed by state, local, and federal laws. Third party and vendor risk, right? Your supply chain is using AI. You need to know how it's being leveraged. You need to get your general counsel and the people that are part of perhaps your strategic sourcing involved in conversations now with your supply chain to understand how your vendors are going to be using your data in their AI models. I'm going to let that sit for just a minute because I think some people just had an oh shit moment. Okay, all right, you're still awake, so I was making sure. And the scalability, right? That goes along with the collaboration, okay? From leading from behind and making sure that the security teams, the IT teams are enabling us to do AI securely. And then, of course, your stakeholder alignment. I said this already once. When it comes to having a use case for AI development in your organization, the first question you should ask is, what problem are we solving with it? We shouldn't do AI just for the sake of using AI for something. We need to make sure that we're taking sort of an industrial engineering approach, if you will, or like efficiency study-wise, taking a look at some of these things that our organization, maybe some of these processes that don't flow well, that maybe some things get missed, and starting to take a look at those things and finding out, okay, how can we refresh those, make a modern process out of it, and how can AI be leveraged to make it more accurate, to make it more streamlined, and then free that person up. No, not take away their job, free that person up so that they can do more critical thinking things that our organization needs them to do on other projects. Those are the types of things with stakeholder alignment. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say, hey, if you can't measure it, you can't, whatever, what is that phrase? If you can't, right? If you can't manage it, you can't measure it, something like that. Anyway, I say measure what matters. Everybody always wants to know, well, what's going to be the return on investment? What are these key performance indicators that we're going to leverage with AI? And my answer to that is, it depends on the organization. Because those KPIs, those measurements, are very unique for every single company. Yes, there may be some folks in retail, there may be folks in healthcare that have some common KPIs, maybe patient outcomes, or maybe repeat customer business. But for every organization, depending on what their mission, vision, and core values are, that's what those KPIs should align to. So measure what matters to the organization. Now, I'm going to give you some templates to use, and I can supply these afterwards as well. But you know, when you think in terms of some of the things that you should measure with AI, as well as any other new technology, you should take a baseline, right? Because you got to start somewhere. Start a baseline, just like in healthcare, right? What are those 5 things that they do to make sure that you're healthy? Your blood pressure, your temperature, your weight, your height, and your pulse ox level, right? That's sort of your Fab 5 right there. You've got to take a pulse on that baseline so that you know exactly where you're either improving or whether maybe things have downgraded a little bit. So once you start to do that, then you can take another measurement on maybe what happened after you implemented AI, maybe immediately after, like give it, you know, a few days, maybe a week or so. Then do another measurement like 90 days on out, comparing it to the baseline, and see how time has maybe helped improve that a little bit. So there's definitely some quick things that you can do to measuring it, and I'm going to put them up here. Now, we're all familiar with some of these security operations ones, right? Mean time to detect, mean time to respond, phishing click rates, all of those. But those are also very, very easy now to capture as part of your security operations metrics when you've got secure AI embedded in your security operations, when it's embedded into your defenses. And the thing that I was talking about with your baseline, before AI, what your maybe hopeful target is, as you defined your business case, you have to define what your critical outcomes are, what your critical success outcomes are, and then do like 90 days later, do the actual. And this is just one example of some of the KPIs and how to measure those. And I've got the Excel spreadsheet for this too that I can share afterwards. Now, let's see. Oh yeah, here's going back to some of those examples of AI done right. Here were some of the examples that those studies showed on what 3 or 5 different companies had shown after they implemented AI. And all of those links there go right to their statistics and how they measured it, what mattered to those organizations in the business cases where they applied AI, and what were their improvements. Okay, so I mean, I didn't just make it up. Oh God, that's an eye chart. All right, so let me see, what am I saying here? Okay, this next slide here, and I think I've got one more. Oh yeah, those are really hard to see. Sorry about that. These 2 slides here, so I've described the what. I've described what we're dealing with. I've described the challenges around AI, securing the base, the framework, right? That's the what. This presentation is also going to give you the how. Where are the resources to go and build a secure foundation for AI? So this document here, which you can have access to, has all the links to different resources, different industry resources, very vendor agnostic, on how you can implement secure AI. This next one here is, of course, Checkpoint's answer to that solution. I had to go ahead and make sure I included that. But all of those links are there so that you have that reference material, because one of the most annoying things that I find when I'm sitting in your seat and I'm at a presentation, everybody does a great job describing the water, but nobody tells us how we're going to go about fixing it, right? So I want you to have some actionable takeaways that you can go back with after today's conference. And you got to do some homework, all right? Or you're going to have to, have somebody on your team do some homework, or maybe you all collaborate, you divide and conquer. I see somebody laughing here. You're going to assign it to someone else on your team? Yeah. But go ahead and divide and conquer on some of these things and read them, because there is sage advice in here about how you can build a strong foundation and secure your AI. All right, so back to Taylor. Okay, I don't know how much time I have left because I know we got started late. I think I'm a half hour or so in. This is exactly how Taylor got it right. Okay, and let's think about how AI can compare to what she accomplished. And I have to read it from my cheat sheet here, because I just put this slide in before I came on stage. So, but I really liked it, so I thought it was a good analogy. So what she basically had here is an opportunity, right? She created, first and foremost, a cohesive narrative, right? She had a great business case for when she wanted to go about doing her Eras tour, right? She came up with that. Oh, don't scroll it yet. Thank you, guys. She came up with the story that she wanted to tell. She came up with her user story, and then she developed how she wanted to articulate it. So through that, then she went ahead and started to monetize that experience, right? Set up for mega tour success, right? Crazy revenue. And then, oh yeah, by the way, the add-on merchandise. Have you ever priced a t-shirt at one of those concerts? Oh my gosh, I don't know what the going rate was on the anybody know what the going rate? I think it was like $45 for a t-shirt. A t-shirt. I don't have one anyway, but I'm willing to take donations. It was the world's highest grossing tour. When you look at that, she connected decades of music into one story. Well, we have decades of broken processes, inefficient technologies, cracked foundations, and how we implement them, right? We have many, many years of experience doing that in every single one of our organizations. I know you all know where those skeletons are. You know where those things are in the closet, right? But she had a long-term vision to make this a cohesive journey. And that's exactly what she did. So on the AI side, don't launch it as just some random pilot, right? I know that there's always going to be somebody that's at the edge of everything. And give them a sandbox to go play in, and then go back and make sure that you're creating those user stories, those business cases, identifying how we're going to solve a business problem, what those metrics are. Is it even worth the investment in the resources, both financially and human, into this project, or would AI be served better somewhere else in the organization? She created an ecosystem, right? Many of these organizations, once they started getting a little bit of momentum with the AI that I showed on the previous slide, then it got easier for them to implement AI. It got easier for them to measure. And oh, by the way, their foundational cracks started to get more and more narrow. Those vulnerabilities, they started to shore those up as every AI project came on board. So that's how they're going to be able to defend themselves against the AI attackers. Okay, so we're going to go back to this slide here. We're going to recap those same steps, all right? And I'm going to ask anybody, shout out, give me one aspect of securing the base. Say it loud. Access, right? Identity and access management. There you go, zero trust. All right, how do we embed AI in security operations? Anyone? Were you listening? Come on, example. I gotta know you guys got this. Yes, there you go, right? Taking a look at what our security operations teams are doing. How can we make what we're doing more efficient? How can AI help the defenders, right? So many opportunities there. Governance and education, I already talked about that. I'm not going to quiz you on that one. The guardrails that you have to put in your own organization, making sure that you're collaborating across the organization, making sure everybody is educated and trained on the safe use of AI. And then, of course, making sure that you're leading from behind, getting all the stakeholders on board with this. Let me see, I want to make sure. Okay. So it's really not about whether AI is going to define our future. It's whether we're ready to build that future, right? And do it right with AI. So with that in mind, I think that's it. Yes, I have time for questions. Anyone? And we have the resources available afterwards as well. Anyone? No? I've rendered you all either silent or you're really thinking about those. There we go, okay. No questions. I can't believe it. I usually get tons of questions. I've given you a lot to think about, and I've given you stuff that you need to take back to work. Because, well, tomorrow's Saturday, so nobody's gonna hopefully do that tomorrow. But take them into your organizations with you on Monday. I'll make sure that you get those handouts. I'll make sure you have everything that has those links, because that is good information on the how. It's not just what CISA has posted, and I don't have anything against CISA, but there's so many other resources that are out there, and so that's why I put them all together there so that you could have your what and have the how. And if any of you are going to the movie this weekend, enjoy. I know I will Sunday night. I'll be thinking about you. Thanks, everyone.